Get the popcorn ready because Mourinho is returning to the Madrid circus. Meanwhile, Pep's leaving City with his twin bro set to take over, and Neymar is headed to the World Cup as Joao Pedro, amongst other big names, miss out. This is DMAC Daily. Flashback to May 2025, and Xabi Alonso was officially appointed Real Madrid's next manager. Could you imagine hearing at the time that less than a full year later, he'd be the next manager of Chelsea Football Club, and Jose Mourinho, of all people, would be returning to a club engulfed in its own civil war? It's so mind-boggling that I don't really know where to begin. Ironically, I was planning on focusing on Xabi Alonso's stunning appointment to Chelsea today, but with all the chaos of the last 24 hours or so, I feel like that's almost old news at this point, so stick around to the end of today's vid for that coverage. But in the meantime, how mental is the timeline that has unfolded? Although, truth be told, it's actually not that surprising that Mourinho's returned. Once it was reported that dictator Perez wanted him back in late April, it was simply a matter of when. Then, the Fight Club shenanigans took center stage. Rudiger v Carreras, Mbappe v the coaching staff, followed by the main event of Tchouaméni versus Valverde, where it appeared the Frenchman came out on top. But now that that whole facade is over, the title is officially lost, and Madrid have finished the season trophyless, it's time to move forward, to put out the flames by hiring Mourinho. If that's not peak Real Madrid, I don't know what is. 16 years ago, this appointment definitely made a whole lot of sense. But in the big 2026, things have changed dramatically. In fact, since he first departed Madrid back in 2013, he's only gone on to win one league title in his following 6 managerial spells. Now, I'm not saying this to slander him. I mean, he's taken some really complicated jobs throughout the last decade or so and has won several trophies too. But the objective reality is that his reputation has subsequently diminished. So to now regain employment at one of the world's biggest clubs that is actively in turmoil is a bit of a head scratcher. Then again, Xabi Alonso to Real Madrid was supposed to be a match made in heaven. A legendary player turned manager who had achieved rapid success elsewhere. It was supposed to be the dream appointment. Many were expecting him to replicate the previous success of Zidane. Yet Alonso's homecoming was a complete disaster. He was unable to exert authority in the dressing room. Meanwhile, the football being produced wasn't particularly great. Overall, it just got toxic real quick. That's not to suggest that Alonso was necessarily the problem. One could argue he was destined to fail at a club overwhelmed by egomaniacal figures. But following his sacking after just 7 months at the helm, it became very difficult to gauge what would actually be best for this club moving forward, because the reason he was hired in the first place was because Ancelotti's methods had gone stale, so they went for a young next-gen tactician. That didn't work, so they pivoted mid-season to a yes-man interim, and that failed miserably. So they're now going for a manager whose methods are even more outdated than Ancelotti's. If we're viewing this purely from a tactical standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. But then again, maybe Mourinho is exactly the type of character to galvanize a broken team. I mean, this guy is the king of instilling an us versus them narrative after all. Truth be told, I'm not sure anyone can fully unify this cohort of players, but if there was someone in theory who could, then it's probably Mourinho. And history has shown us that Mourinho isn't afraid to take control of the power dynamics at Madrid. I think of Casillas, for instance. He was often publicly critical of Ronaldo too. Basically, no one is safe from the wrath of Jose, which could be a good thing considering the inconsistencies of various high-profile players at this club currently. The special one is also an expert in navigating the Madrid media storm. So this is an appointment that at its core is an emotional one. Maybe it's a yearning for nostalgia or a cry to restore order. I don't know what Perez's main motivations are here, but from a purely tactical, logical standpoint, there are clear issues. Let's face it, post-Chelsea, Mourinho's teams have been a tough watch at times. And sure, United, Spurs, and Roma were all very difficult clubs to succeed in. But at Fenerbahce, he pretty much failed. And at Benfica, sure, he technically went unbeaten in the league, but also finished third and trophyless. More concerningly, Mourinho's now gone 10 consecutive Champions League knockout stage matches without a win. For Madrid's status as the greatest Champions League team in football history, is that the kind of coach you want to bring in right now? Long story short, this is a seismic gamble. Will it pay off? Personally, I'm skeptical. But one thing I'm sure we can all universally agree on is that fireworks are inevitable. Switching gears to Mourinho's greatest ever rival, and it's another bombshell on the cards with the news that Pep Guardiola is set to depart Manchester City at the season's end, with Enzo Maresca destined to take over. It's time to run it back, guys. Get the Catalan back to Barca ASAP for another iteration of Pep versus Jose. Now, sadly, that seems unlikely with Hansi Flick just signing a fresh deal with the Blaugrana, but focusing on the actual story at hand here, and this is huge, right? The most dominant manager of the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era in English football is calling it a day, having already won 6 league titles, 20 trophies in total, including City's first ever Champions League title. He secured a domestic treble back in 18-19 and then delivered a continental treble 4 years later. Can't forget about the Centurions too and all the different iterations of success he upheld. And look, there are various legitimate criticisms to be had of City's success. There is the looming threat of the Premier League's charges that await the club currently. Many of those charges overlap with Pep's reign, and one could argue that he benefited from City allegedly rorting the system, but that's not for me to decide. What I will say is that his sustained success over the last 15 years is a testament to his managerial prowess. Many are hoping that with Pep inevitably stepping down, this will lead to an imminent downfall of City moving forward. Is it going to be Moisey 2.0 with Maresca in charge? Personally, I doubt it. This City team is relatively young. The foundations and the organizational structure of this club will most likely continue to operate at an elite level. If I were a City fan, I'd be more concerned about the looming charges implicating the club's future rather than Maresca's managerial capabilities. I think this is a guy who did relatively well at Chelsea, delivering the only 2 pieces of silverware in the Bluecoat era. Can't also forget about his previous experience with City, first as a youth coach before rejoining as Pep's number 2. His coaching philosophy is also eerily similar to Pep's too, so it's a logical fit. I mean, he resembles Pep in many ways, both physically speaking and in the mental capacity, but make no mistake, Pep is one of a kind. I don't think we'll be seeing this team reach those same dizzying heights anytime soon. Perhaps some City fans would have preferred Vincent Kompany to take the reins, another emerging manager who thrived under the school of Pep, but he's currently doing wonderful things at Bayern Munich, so maybe they'll relitigate that opportunity down the line. In the meantime, Pep's still got a title to play for as of today. Could be a different story come tomorrow if City don't get the 3 points away at Bournemouth. That's going to be a very difficult game, just quietly. Bournemouth are unbeaten in their last 16 Premier League outings and are pushing for a Champions League spot. So the pressure is on City big time, especially seeing as though the Gunners have prevailed once again via a lone set piece, as has been the case for the majority of the season. Arsenal utilizing their set piece dominance to overcome Burnley at the Emirates. Kai Havertz, a frequent scorer of big goals, coming in clutch once again. It was a bit of a nervy performance from Arteta's side at times, but maybe that's a bit of a harsh assessment because Arsenal didn't look like conceding. In fact, Burnley's final attempt came in the 57th minute of this match. Arsenal aren't bothered about the concept of winning pretty. 3 points is all that matters at this stage. I have an inkling suspicion that the title is won tomorrow, but if City do take all 3 points, then it goes down to match day 38, where Arsenal are in a great position to take all 3 points in that match against a Palace side that has their first ever European Cup final just a few days later. I know Glasner mentioned he, quote, won't rotate a lot against Arsenal, but this ultimately is a meaningless game for their season, so we'll see what happens. Switching gears to international football news, and it's official. Neymar is headed to the 2026 World Cup, reinstated in the Seleção team for the first time since October 2023. I gotta say, I am genuinely shocked by this selection news. I did not anticipate Ancelotti calling up the 34-year-old. Since day one of stepping into the Brazil job, Ancelotti kept repeating the same rhetoric. If he can get fit and healthy, then the opportunity remains, but it still appeared unlikely. After all, Neymar's return to Santos has been a roller coaster, battling relegation, fitness issues, inconsistent performances on the pitch, and also internal fighting. But fair play to Neymar. Against the odds, he has battled his way into the final squad. Now, would he have made the squad if Rodrigo or Esteval were fit? Who knows? But regardless, there were some big absentees from this final team, the biggest of which being João Pedro. Chelsea's teammates owe this man an apology because if he was surrounded by competent players, he'd almost certainly be getting on the plane. I'm happy to see Igor Thiago get the nod though. He's had a fabulous season at Brentford. Same with wonder kids Endrick and Ryan. These two are special players, no doubt. What a revelation Ryan has been at Bournemouth. Martinelli Martinelli is the head scratcher on paper, but as I said earlier, Ancelotti's clearly a big fan. He's used him frequently since stepping into the job. So if I'm looking at Brazil's squad in its entirety, there are some clear weak spots. The fullback department isn't incredible. I think Wesley's had a great season at Roma, but that's about it. Sandro and Danilo, what is this, Porto 2015? Douglas Santos, again, not incredible. I think the midfield is questionable too. The fact that Ancelotti's only included 5 players tells me that Brazil are going to probably set up in a 4-2-3-1. I like Guimarães and Casemiro as a double pivot, but can it win a World Cup? I'm not so sure. I expected Paqueta and Fabinho to make the final squad. I'm a tad surprised with Danilo's selection personally. I know he's been balling out since returning back to Brazil, but I think it's incredibly harsh that both Edison and Andre Santos were excluded. Those 2 omissions seem crazy to me, but someone's got to miss out. Either way, I can't wait to see this Brazil team. I don't have them as the favorites by any means, but there's still a lot of quality in this final 26. And with Neymar potentially in the mix, that is box office right there. As of recording right now, we also saw the likes of Turkey, Curacao, Iran, Cabo Verde, Austria, Jordan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Croatia all announce their final World Cup squads. It's heating up rapidly. As you know, I've been highly critical of this year's tournament and all the problematic aspects to it. But at the end of the day, I can't wait to cover my first World Cup independently each and every day. Exciting times ahead. And now to quickly give my 2 cents on the Xabi Alonso appointment, and I'm absolutely thrilled. Look, the best case scenario for Chelsea as of right now is that they somehow manage to sneak into the Europa League for next season. Only time will tell if that outcome comes to fruition. Either way, this is the first elite managerial hire of the Blueco era. And before you say, well, what about Maresca? Understand, he came into Chelsea having won the championship with Leicester. Alonso already has the reputation of a world-class manager. Sure, it didn't work out at Madrid for him recently, but that doesn't change my perspective on Alonso's qualities. And the fact that he was hired at Chelsea as a manager as opposed to a head coach is a positive sign. He needs to have a say in our recruitment moving forward because that is a clear area for improvement. Now, I said it the other day, but despite the evident flaws within this squad, of which there are many, there is an abundance of talent to build this squad on. The likes of Penders, Colwell, Achiampong, Hato, Cucurella, Gusto, Caicedo, Santos, Lavia, Enzo, James, Palmer, Esteval, Kenda next season, and Pedro. But there's got to be a clear out too. Jorgensen isn't good enough. Adarabioyo, nowhere near good enough. Same thing for Badiashile. Same thing for Delap. Nowhere near good enough. Subject 49 is on thin ice. Most Chelsea fans are already calling for his head. Same thing with Pedro Neto, Fofana, and Chalobah. So there's a lot for Alonso to think about in terms of the squad he assembles next season. I hope the club evolves in their recruitment policy, moving away from just hoarding wonder kids. Chelsea needs players for the here and now, players that can arrive and immediately elevate the squad's level. I think the 2 main areas that need drastic improvement are in the centre-back position and a top left winger. Garnacho and Bino Gittins have largely underwhelmed, as has Neto. People are already suggesting that we'll see Chelsea line up in a back 3 next season, but I think it's way too early to assume that. Alonso is a fluid manager after all and has tinkered with systems at both Leverkusen and Madrid in the past. I am surprised that Callum McFarlane has kept the assistant manager role. Not sure how to feel about that just quietly, but either way, the next few months are going to be very interesting. It's great that Chelsea got their managerial appointment secured this early, and the fact that they landed their #1 dream candidate is a source of optimism. Cautious optimism, considering the owner's tendency to screw everything up, but the Chelsea fan base is buzzing with Alonso, whilst Liverpool fans cannot believe they've missed out on the Spaniard. Anyways, guys, that's all for today's DMAC Daily. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll see you tomorrow.